Slim on the outside, big on the inside. Hey guys, and welcome back to another Random Distractions home theater update video. So a little while back, Arendal was kind enough to send me a pair of their 1528 Slim 8 speakers to check out. And quick note on that, this video is not sponsored and Arendal didn't have any say in what I'm covering or what I think about these. They just sent the speakers over. I'll also be sending these back once I'm done with them, so this is more of a temporary loan and not a permanent addition to the setup, unfortunately. Everything you're about to hear is just my honest take. I figured instead of just doing a straight unboxing and review on their own, it'd be way more interesting to actually compare them to something I already know really well, my 1961 towers, which I've had in this room for a while now and have talked about a bunch in past videos. These two speakers are not in the same price bracket, not even close, so this is really a which one should you buy video. It's more of a what do you actually get when you spend more kind of video. I think that's actually a really useful comparison because a lot of people, including myself, want to know, is the price difference actually audible? Is it worth it? So let's dig in. Quick disclaimer, as always, I'm not a professional reviewer. This is all just one guy's living room and his ears, so your experience may vary. Alright, Arendal unboxing the 1528 Slim 8s. Here's the box. Let's try to open her up. Check out the writing on the outside of this outer box. There's actually a little write-up here about why these are called the 1528 series, and I think it's worth pointing out because it can be confusing. Arendal names their model series after big years in Arendal's history, not after specs or release dates. 1528 specifically refers to the year the town of Arendal in Norway first showed up in historical records tied to the timber trade that put the area on the map. So Arendal Sound is basically using that same idea, putting Arendal back on the map, but in audio this time. So just keep that in mind. The 1528 doesn't mean anything technical, it's a nod to their hometown's history. So it looks like it comes double boxed, which I honestly always appreciate. It gives me a little more confidence things survive shipping. Alright, let's get into the inner box. Doesn't look like there's any writing on the outside of this one. Inside we've got some anti-mold chips, a pair of gloves, and some rubber pads that are inside a bag. You'll also find unboxing instructions which actually walk you through it step by step. And you have this guy here, which has some important detail that the tweeter and the mid-range grill are not removable. So just keep that in mind if you're ever cleaning these or moving them around. There's also a plastic bag with some paperwork. There's a really nice printed Arendal 1528 handbook, super well put together. Has all the specs for the whole 1528 lineup here. And you also got a 5-year, 10-year warranty card. Oh, and here's something interesting. It comes with a VESA wall mount. That's a nice touch. Definitely speaks to how versatile this slim model is meant to be. Wall mount, TV stand, stereo pair, whatever you need. Looking at the wall mount hardware itself, looks like we've got some drywall anchors, some smaller screws, and some bigger screws. I'm not planning to wall mount these, so I'm just going to put all this back for now. And then there's the grill, which we'll take a closer look at in a minute. Alright, let's get this thing out. One thing I will say about it is this thing is solid. This thing looks impressive for sure. And remember, this is the slim version. I genuinely can't even imagine what the bookshelf model looks like in person. And there it is, the Arendal 1528 Slim 8, which, despite the name, is really big. Here's the back. You can see the binding post there. Okay, now let's do the second one. Alright, so here are the 1528 Slims fully unboxed, and let's not forget the grills. If you look on the back of the grill, you'll see it says Arendal up at the top and designed in Norway down at the bottom. And those line up with the magnets that are around the woofer on the speaker. So as long as you've got the orientation right with Arendal at the top, it'll just click into place. It's a nice little touch there because you want to actually see that once the grill is actually on, since on the front it's just going to be plain. It's still a cool little touch though that most people will never even know is there. And there we go. Okay, so now that they're unboxed and set up, let's actually get into the comparison. For reference, on the 1961 towers I've got, those are obviously a much bigger speaker. They're a 2.5-way design with 4 5.5-inch woofers, a sealed or ported enclosure depending on how you've got them configured, and they're rated for an even lower frequency response, especially in ported mode. The 1528 Slim 8, on the other hand, even though it's slim, it's actually a 3-way design. It's got a 28mm lithium magnesium tweeter, a 5-inch carbon graphene mid-range, and a single 8-inch aluminum woofer, all in a sealed enclosure. And it's not a small speaker. At about 51 pounds, it's actually heavier than my 1961 tower, which comes in at around 39.5 pounds. Kind of wild when you think about how much smaller the Slim is, footprint-wise. It's just dense. There's a lot going on packed into that cabinet. For this comparison, I'm running both through my Peachtree Carina integrated amp with my laptop streaming lossless audio from Spotify over USB. Same setup I've used in past videos, so hopefully that gives some consistency if you've watched those. Okay, so sound impressions. This is obviously the part everyone actually cares about. The first thing that struck me with the 1528 Slim is the clarity, and honestly that kind of makes sense. There's a real price gap between these two speakers, and clarity is one of those things that tends to scale pretty directly with cost. The tweeter and the mid-range in the 1528 just sound more refined, more detailed. You pick up on little things in recordings that I didn't notice much on the 1961s. The other thing that really surprised me is just how big these sound for their size. Like I said, they're not small speakers. They're big and they're heavy, but even accounting for that, the soundstage and the presence that they create in the room feels way larger than you'd expect just looking at them. There's a largeness to the sound that punches above their physical footprint, if that makes sense. Now, bass, this is where the 1961s still have the edge, especially when I run them in ported mode. The 1961 towers with those 4 5.5-inch woofers just move more air, and in ported mode they dig noticeably deeper. The 1528 Slim being sealed isn't going to compete with that directly, that's just physics. But, and this is the part that actually surprised me, the bass on the 1528 Slim is more than I expected going in. I went into this assuming it would feel kind of thin or lacking down low just based on the form factor, and that's really not the case. It's not 1961 in ported mode bass, but it's solid, controlled, and honestly satisfying on its own. And here's the thing, if you paired the 1528 Slim with a subwoofer, which is honestly how I'd run these in a dedicated setup anyway, I don't think you'd be missing much at all. The mid-range and treble clarity from the 1528 is really good, that I think a sub would fill in the last bit of low end, and you'd end up with a really complete sounding system. I also ran some measurements in REW for both speakers, just doing a quick sine sweep with my measurement mic, with the 1961s tested in both sealed and ported mode, so you can see the difference that makes too. Let's take a look. Okay, let's start with the 1528 Slim 8. You can see what that looks like. It actually looks pretty good. These dips are obviously probably going to be room modes and the room causing issues, so it's not necessarily the speaker that's doing that. But it's worth keeping in mind if you ever do your own measurements and see something similar, don't panic. It's usually the room talking, not the speaker. Now let's turn on first the 1961 sealed, and you can kind of see kind of what I mean about as far as like the bass being able to keep up. So around 40 Hertz, it does really good at 1528 before it starts rolling off. But then of course the 1961 ported, that adds a lot more bass there in the 20 to 50 Hertz range, which you can definitely notice. But both the ported and the sealed have basically the same response over here on the top end. So up in the mid-range and treble, the 1528 actually measures smoother and a bit more even than either of the 1961 modes, with less variation across that range and a bit more output up top in the 10K to 20K area. That actually lines up pretty well with what I was hearing. That extra clarity and detail I noticed on the 1528 isn't just in my head, it shows up in the measurements as well. So those are the measurements, but here's what it actually sounds like with music playing. This next clip is going to be the RTA function in REW running in real time while the song plays through each speaker, so you can kind of see the energy moving around across the frequency range as the track plays. Now, obviously, listening to this on YouTube is not the same as hearing it in person. Your speakers or headphones, the compression, all of that changes what you're actually hearing compared to standing in the room. So take this more as a visual aid for what's going on than a real representation of the sound itself. Let's start with the 1528 playing the song. Now let's listen to the 1961 in sealed mode. And finally, here's the 1961 in ported mode. So overall, really impressed with the 1528 Slim 8s. Given the price difference between these two speakers, I think you'd hope to hear some improvement, and you definitely do. The clarity and that sense of scale in the sound are clear steps up. The bass trade-off compared to my 1961s, especially in ported mode, is real, but it's smaller than I expected, and pairing these with a sub would pretty easily close that gap. I want to be clear, this comparison wasn't because anyone asked for it specifically. It's just the way I had things set up and the gear I had on hand, so I figured why not put this two side by side and share what I found. Also, like I've done in the past, I'm trying to get these in front of other people with different speakers so we can compare notes from a different room and a different setup. I've already got a couple of people lined up who are interested in doing that, so keep an eye out for those videos down the road. If you got questions about either of these speakers, drop them in the comments below and I'll try to get to them. Well, That's all I have for this video. I would definitely appreciate a like, of course, on this one, and make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when the next one drops. But until then, I hope you have a good one.